Good morning in Queensland, good afternoon in New South Wales, Victoria. In South Australia, I think it's still morning, and Western Australia and Northern Territory, obviously it's still morning. Welcome to this webinar on ESS BIZGRANTS. I hope you're having a wonderful day, and for those of you in areas that are suffering some bad weather at present, I hope you're going okay. So today's subject is ESS BIZGRANTS. There's a few people who have registered haven't arrived yet, but we'll get started because time is important. If you have any questions whilst we're going through the webinar, could you please type your question into the system and raise your hand in using webinar jargon, and I will answer your question later in the webinar. So what I want to do first of all is just give you an overview of grants. Why develop a product like ESS BIZGRANTS? Well, we believe it's a proactive service for your clients because your clients are in control of the process right through. You're not sending your client off to an external consultant who may or may not comply with your referral and the spirit that it's made in, and you might find that your client has been encouraged to go to another accountant. You don't want that. And it's a great entry into business advisory services. We honestly believe that business advisory services are very important for accountants facing the challenges of what's happening in the marketplace with the prospect of digital disruption that's occurring at present, and also the taxation office's changes to the standard business reporting and their calculations that will result in a reduction in professional accounting fees, which the tax office is calling a red tape reduction, of all things, of $500 million per annum. That's going to affect some firms a lot harder than others. So the key benefits, ability to obtain financial assistance from the government for your clients. We're in difficult times at present. This grant process can significantly help clients. So what I thought I'd do today is just give you an update on the grants that the current Liberal National Party government have introduced over the last 6 or 7 months. So we have accelerating commercialisation, which is currently the largest grant that's available for small businesses other than research and development rebate, and you would have to spend a lot of money on R&D, but some people do. But accelerating commercialisation, there's grants of up to $1 million, 50% contribution. The turnover ratio, because the big challenge in looking at grants is grants vary based on entity, turnover, number of employees, years in business. There is not many grants available these days for startups. But this one, accelerating commercialisation, is there as long as the business has produced a novel product, process or service. It doesn't have to be a company to make the application, but by the time the process is concluded and for grant is offered, the applicant has to have incorporated a company. So it's a great grant for people who have developed new products or services. It's applicable to any type of industry, but there is a weighting benefit for the industries that this government has referred to as priority industries. Now, at first glance, as I'm putting them on the screen there now, you might think, oh, that's fairly restrictive. But among these 5 industry categories, there are hundreds of different type of business activities that can qualify. So I'd suggest that you have a look at what your clients are doing under those categories, because we're going to refer to these industry classifications a bit later on this morning, because this government is definitely trying to prioritise their grant program towards these industries. The next grant is Research Connections. It's part of the Liberal government's entrepreneurship grant program. Now, this only applies for companies that have turnovers of a minimum of $1.5 million and a maximum of $100 million, and the business must have been operating for 3 years. So the criteria has been significantly reduced, and the business is undertaking research. And the business must be operating in one of those priority industries again. Or supply enabling technologies that help one of those 5 industries out of freight and logistics, infrastructure related, construction, information communication technology, and professional services. And it's a very limited group of professional services, mainly scientific professional services. So that's Research Connections. The grant's up to $50,000 on a 50-50 basis. Will not appeal to all of your clients. Obviously, the minimum turnover will knock a lot of them out, and they have to be doing advanced research to be eligible under that grant. The other grant that the Liberal government's introduced replaces the Enterprise Connect grant that the previous government, the Labor government, had. They drive us mad, these governments. Every time a government changes, they want to go in and fiddle with the grant program. Business Growth Grant also is targeted at these priorities industries, those 5 industries again. But as I said, if you really go through and look, you will find that the potential industries are hundreds of industries in those classifications, or the businesses supply these additional services from these 4 categories. Now, what's in this? First of all, the turnover has to be $1.5 million to $100 million. However, in remote areas, $750,000 to $100 million. So that applies in areas in Northern Territory, and I know we've got some viewers from Darwin this morning. Your minimum turnover for this grant is only $750,000, and obviously the other parts of Australia, cities like Mount Isa and others, the minimum turnover is $750,000, but the maximum is $100 million. And what they can get is a grant of up to $20,000 on a 50% basis. So if someone's got the maximum grant, obviously there's $40,000 in the pool. And what can they do with it? Generally anything which will improve the company's performance. So it might be a business plan, it might be market research, it might be a human resources system, it might be a analysis of their human resources as it applies to Fair Work Australia. It might be a mentoring of the management team, which I've done for about 6 or 7 businesses over a 6-month period. So it can be a wide range of projects, many of which can be done by accountants. It can also cover redesigning a factory, workplace health and safety, computer designs, upgrades, etc. So it can cover a wide range of activities which will improve the business's performance. So that's a quick overview of the new grants that the Abbott government has introduced. Some of them are basically replacements for programs which were running previously by both the Labor government and then the Howard Liberal governments, but they just keep on changing the name and tweaking with the eligibility and turnover rules just to keep us all on our toes and make life interesting. So how does ESS BIZGRANTS work? We're going to show you in a minute, but basically you need to input some basic data. This will take a maximum of 3 minutes. You identify the corporate structure for your client, because grants are made for various types of entities. The turnover of the client will be very important. Employee numbers come into play in some of the grants. Not all, but some of them, particularly state and territory grants. Location can have a bearing. Indeed, in the business growth grant, as I just mentioned, businesses located in remote or very remote locations, according to the health industry maps, have a lower minimum turnover requirement. Expenditure is important in some grants. Do you export? Questions are asked on exports because there's a grants for export market development grant. Research and development. We want to know if the business is undertaking research and development. Obviously, if they're a company and they're spending more than $20,000 per annum, they could be entitled to the research and development rebate of 43.5%. But the fact that they're undertaking research and development could also identify for us that they're undertaking other work which might lead to some other grants. And the industry that they're in, the type of business, which we'll be having a close look at in a moment because it's also a critical factor. So that's the basic information that we need to be disclosed. And what do we produce? Well, first of all, we're going to show you that we produce a possible grants in a pending list, so that after we've put in the basic data, the system is going to search it. We've already entered hundreds of government grants into our system and have gone through and clearly identified into the components of entity, turnover, years in business, number of employees, does the business undertake R&D, etc. But then there's going to be a need, as the system is trying to narrow down into a filter the businesses to work out whether they might be truly eligible for that particular grant. We do need to ask some additional questions. You can get assistance from the toolkit, and that's papers and forms and articles on a particular grant that you can read so you'll get a better understanding of it, and so that you could print that to give to your client if you wished. And depending on the answers, some grants will then be included in a report format that the system produces, which is the potentially eligible grants report that will have the client's name on it, your name, the date it was produced, and this is a report that you can sit down then and have a conversation with your client to make them aware of the grants. At that stage, our suggestion would be that you'd be seeking approval from your client to proceed with completing the grant applications on their behalf. Now, in some instances, very few, in my experience, the client might decide they're going to do this themselves, but most of your clients haven't got the time, don't know how to go about it, and don't really like filling in forms. So in most cases, the client, if they're interested in proceeding with the grant, will want you to handle the process for them. You can then link to the website of the relevant government department, so you can go straight to their site, and you will then be able to view the application form and complete it. So why use ESS BIZGRANTS? We believe we're offering you a proactive service that allows you as the accountant advisor to be the project manager for your client on this process. There is a potential for earning substantial consultancy fees. I honestly believe that government grants is the gateway for accountants and advisors into business advisory services, especially grants like business growth, helping clients on research and development, and if you happen to have a client that has invented a new product, process or service, accelerating commercialization is a great grant and can incorporate things like business plans, budgets, cash flow forecasts, proposals to attract investment funds from angel investors, etc. So it's an ideal way to start a business advisory service And the real benefit is the government's going to pay at least 50% of the cost of this process. So what we might do now is just go straight on to the ESS BIZTOOLS website. Sorry, ESS BIZGRANTS website. I was getting mixed up there. So when you first come onto the site, you will go to the members home area. We could go back to the won't allow me to go back to where I wanted to go to at this stage. The first thing you have to complete is a client profile. We've completed some profiles in the past, but I'm just going to start one here now. And the first thing, so this is the profile you've got to complete. The first thing you need to do is to enter the client's name. So I might call it Southwest Fabrications. Proprietary Limited. We need to identify the entity type that belongs that this business has. Now the default is a company, and that's what this entity is. But if it was an individual or a partnership, you would identify it. A word of warning, I cannot think of a government grant program that a company is not an eligible entity, but a number of these other entities are only eligible in some instances. We then need to say, do they export? And this is a fabricating business. It's got 20 employees, turnover of 6.8 million. It's located in Townsville, and they do export. So we'll click that they export. Do they import? Yeah, they do some importing. They've got 20 employees. Now the employee categories are dissected into the categories that apply in various grants. So we said we had 20, so we click on 0 to 20. Do you have an ABN? Yes, we've got an ABN. Businesses need an ABN to apply for a grant. How many years have you been operating? This business has been going for 10 years. This slide is divided into the various year categories that the various grants refer to. So we're over 3 years, so we're going to click that. The next question that the system wants us to answer is turnover. Now the turnover categories are also shown there, and they're in accordance with these hundreds of grants depending on what turnover level they've got. And we said that this business had a turnover of 6.8 million, so that's in the 1.5 to $20 million grant. Are you registered for GST? We're going to answer yes for that, because the business is needs to be registered for GST. Are you tax exempt? If we answered yes for that, we wouldn't be offered a grant, but because this system is designed for businesses, not for not-for-profits or charities. And we're asked, are we involved in research and development? Yeah, well, we're doing a fair bit of research and development, so we're going to answer yes. And that might show us some grants other grants that we might want to have a look at. So we click save for that. I think a good operator would go through that in less than 3 minutes. We'll put an address in, 234. You can see typing is not my strong point. Main Road, and we'll put in Townsville. Now when we put in the postcode, and obviously we can select the state or territory, we've selected Queensland, and we'll put in the postcode, which is 4810, and we can save that. If we had a branch in other areas, we could then record those. The system has now shown us the address again, but it's now added the location type, because there are some grants which apply in various areas, and Townsville's in the outer regional Australia area. So we've put our data in. If you want to check it, there's the financial details. The next big thing though is the business industry code. Now, I said before this business was a steel fabricator. Now, if I knew their business industry code as used by the taxation office, which I assume most of you would know, you can insert that number there straight away and go straight to search grants. If you don't know the number and you're unsure of it, you could go to the Australian Taxation Office business industry codes, which are linked. So you could go there and then go through it, either through the alphabetical index or the index accordance to the Australian Bureau of Statistics, 18 industry classifications, and you can find the business code that you're looking for. What we're going to do is I've now gone back to the beginning of the slide. I clicked on the wrong thing there. We'll come back to this. We'll just go back to where we were. So we're on Southwest Fabrications, and we're over here ready to do this. So we're on Business Industry Code. I know that they're a steel fabricator. That's what I know. So we could just put the word in, steel, and it will now search the database, the ATO database, and will identify the various types of businesses that have got steel in their name. Now, the one I was looking for was this structural and metal manufacturing. So we'll click on that. And what that's done is transferred this business activity onto the left-hand side of the system. You could put other processes if you knew the business was doing them as well. But so we might put the labouring structural steel. They do that as well. So we've now got these two classifications, and at this stage we can search grants. So the system is now going to search based on the classification, the entity type, the turnover, the number of employees, the years of operation, whether they do R&D, whether they export, and the type of industry that they're in. And the system has identified that there's potentially 19 grants. Now, some of these will be repeated a little bit, but that gives you an idea that there's some grants there. And what we have then is a summary of what is in each of the grants. Now, I just pressed on accelerating commercialisation. So what you have there is a description of what accelerating commercialisation is all about. So you could read that and see that there's grants, and you know the client's been doing some research on a new type of product, and you say, okay, you might be interested in that. Let's look at the funding. Well, the funding's from a very low amount, up to $1 million. Incidentally, the government expect the average grant to be in the vicinity of $250,000. 50% funding by the government. Obviously, the client's got to find the balance. If you want to have a look at the toolkit, we've now got the paper that we have written within ESS BIZTOOLS, our other product, which is the product that identifies how this, this is the paper that identifies how this particular grant operates. This is the contents. There's a lot of weight here on the merit criterion, but after all, someone could get $1 million out of this, so they need to supply a fair bit of information. And then we go into the paper itself, which is going through explaining how it works. So if you decide that your client could well be interested in this, it's not a bad idea to print this paper for him or her to give to them so they've got a better understanding of what it's all about. So we say, okay, we might be interested in this, so we better look at this additional criteria. Pardon me. And this is the questions that we're now answering as we try to really narrow down the filter to see whether your client might well be interested in this grant or eligible for it. Has the applicant developed a novel product? Well, we say, yeah, we know he or she's done that. If they're not a company, will they agree to become a company before they sign the government contract? Well, that's pretty obvious. I think they'd do that. Does the applicant have the ability to fund 50% of the project and complete the project within 2 years? Now, for the exercise, you could answer yes to that and then have that detailed conversation with your client. But obviously, if they're going to go for a $200,000 grant, they've got to be able to find $200,000. They don't have to have that money on day one. They don't have to have it when they apply. But they need to be able to put forward a reasonable summary of where they're going to get their $200,000 from. It can come from sales of other products. It can come from business investment by angel investors. But to succeed in the application, they will need to have letters of intent from those investors. The letters can be conditional on the business obtaining a grant like this. So if the grant doesn't come through, well, the investors don't have to put their money up because they're really only covering half the expenditure. So if we say, yeah, we're going to have that ability, can they justify the funding? In other words, there needs to be budgets, there needs to be quotes, there needs to have been some real detailed thinking, not just plucking a figure out of the air and saying, I'm going to spend $400,000. And the applicant must have the ownership or control of the intellectual property. Now, when I hit yes there, I've answered all the questions correctly. And then we get apply now appears. If we had answered any of those questions incorrectly, apply now would not have been presented to us. If you clicked on apply now, you're then going to get the URL of the government department that's handling accelerating commercialisation. So you could click that and go to them and look at their website. That takes a little bit of time, so I'm going to close this now, and the system's now going to decide based on the answers that have been given. Pardon me, based on the answers that have been given, is the client eligible for a grant? When we go back to pending grants, we've now only got 18 because within potentially eligible, we've now got that one, accelerating commercialisation. So let's go back to pending. There are a number of apprenticeship grants there on offer. These grants are basically available for every business in Australia. The government has announced there's going to be some changes to apprenticeship schemes from the 1st of July, but I haven't seen any more comments on that since they announced it. And at this stage, we've still got in the system what the current law is, obviously. Australian Bureau of Statistics is a range of free material that's available that from the Bureau of Statistics, which can be very beneficial for a business. Then we got the Business Growth Grant, and you'll notice that it's been offered to us on 3 occasions. That's because this business could run over a number of different classifications, either advanced manufacturing or mining or infrastructure. So we'll go on to the advanced manufacturing. It's, first of all, we get the summary again. Identifies the sort of area the money can be spent in, but I've said to you that generally it's anything which will improve the business's performance. Funding up to $20,000 on a 50% basis. The toolkit. Now you can read all about business growth grants or the paper we've written on the particular industry. So there's a summary of the business growth grants, which is a detailed paper, and then it is dissected into the various components. And obviously this one is advanced manufacturing. So it's an explanation of how the system operates. and gives you classification of turnovers and everything else that you need to know. And then we go into additional criteria. Is the business solvent? These are the key questions in this particular grant. Has the business been operating for at least 3 years under an approved structure? Incidentally, this scheme differs a little bit from the Enterprise Connect, which was the similar scheme run by the previous government. The previous rules said that the applicant had to be a company for 3 years. The rules have now been changed that as long as the applicant's a company when they're applying, if they can track their history or their ownership from a sole trader or a partnership or a trust, and now they're in a company, then they could be eligible for this grant. Has the applicant ever received a business growth grant or a tailored advisory grant under the Enterprise Connect program? We're going to answer, we haven't, so we answer no to that. And does the business provide high value added manufactured goods? And we answer yes to that. Oh, I must have clicked on yes there before. And that's really what I wanted to do. So I've answered, so that to show you the effect of when you've answered a question incorrectly, because if you've already applied for this and received it under a business growth grant or a tailored advisory services grant under the Enterprise Connect program, you cannot be eligible. So, and that's why the crosses come up there. When we go back to updating, we're now back to 17 grants, but I think we'll find that in potentially ineligible, we've got that business growth grant. We'll just do another one in the pending area. We'll skip through these. We might go to Export Market Development Grant. There's the summary. There's the detail of the funding. Or grant applications for the June 14 year have now closed. They had to be lodged by the end of November 14. So the next application for this grant doesn't start until July 1. If you want to read, we'll just show a bit of variety this time. There's a list of the eligible expenses that are claimable under the Export Market Development Grant, so they're there, so you can give them to your client. There's a paper there as well. Then we go into the additional criteria. Have you spent money to seek out, create demand? That's what you've got to do. We answer yes. If you're claiming overseas representation, have you maintained documentary advice? You say yes. If you're claiming expenses under marketing visits, have you maintained full records? We say yes. If you've claimed 2 export market development grants in prior years, have you had your meeting with Austrade? That's part of the system these days. So we'll say yes, we've done that. Hopefully your client's done that. And you've got to have spent more than $20,000 in 13-14 on export activities other than in New Zealand, Iran and North Korea. Our apologies to any New Zealand participants today. I know you don't like that, but Australia treats you as a state for this grant, not the same as we treat North Korea and Iran. So, and also we've got a note there that in fact for the first claim, as you probably know, it can be a 2-year aggregate to get the $20,000 expenditure. So we could do all that, so we say yes. And is the business the principal? The business needs to be the principal. Apply now's popped up. That goes to Austrade, but we won't go there. We'll go straight to close. And when we go back to the system, we're now down to 16 grants. Obviously, you would continue then to proceed through this list. It brings in some grants that are only applying in Queensland, like Mentoring for Growth. It brings in the new Industry Skills Fund, which I would recommend that you have a look at. brings in research connections, and again it's broken them into another number of industries. So there's probably 10 potential grants there if you take out some of those duplications that have occurred. So it's worth having a look at. If we go to potentially eligible, we have the 2 grants there. And what I want to show you now is how the report is produced. So based on whatever's in potentially eligible, the system will then produce the report. It's got the name of the client. The name prepared by would be your business name, accounting advisory firm name, obviously not ESS BIZTOOLS. The system is dated Black Friday. We've got the profile on the grants that's there, and it's telling your client what the grant amounts are, and the same with the Export Market Development Grant. So that's how the system works. How do we think you should use this? At this time of the year, as you're completing business financial accounts, our recommendation is you take that extra 3 minutes to put the client profile into the system. We are using cloud technology, so you can leave the information in the system, and next year you're just only going to have to update it. It will not take the 3 minutes. Immediately answering the profile questions takes a bit longer, but probably no more than 6 to 10 minutes, so that when your client comes in for a review of their financial accounts, you're able to be very proactive and present to them this report, which identifies the grants that they might be eligible for. The disclaimer that you undoubtedly saw then at the bottom of the page is really saying that an application still has to be submitted, and you cannot give any guarantees that they're going to be successful in that, because it's an application to a government department who have got their own rules. And indeed, your client, you might find out, might be on some sort of blacklist because they've participated in an earlier government grant and haven't quite done the right thing. So that's how the system works to assist businesses. I'm just going to see now if there are any questions. I hadn't been prompted, so no, I haven't got any questions. If you've got any questions, where I'm happy to look at them. If you think of them later on, please don't hesitate to send me an email, and I will get back to you and answer the questions. So in summary, I think I've shown you why you should be offering ESS BIZGRANTS. Enables you to deliver a proactive service. You're the project manager. Potential for substantial fees, and an ideal way to start this activity. So your investment in this process for 12 months, 24/7 access to ESS BIZGRANTS is $450 plus GST for the 12 months. That's an office subscription. Or you can pay $43 per month for 12 months. The $450 is a discounted upfront price. And if you have elected to become a ESS BIZTOOLS Gold subscriber, and we've had quite a number of those in the last couple of weeks, they all receive free access to ESS BIZGRANTS. So you don't have to pay the extra money, but some people just like having a separate access to ESS BIZGRANTS. You can do that. So for any further information, please go to our website, and it was a miss. I needed now to go back to that website to just show you what you do when you go to the website. So just bear with me. So when you first go to the ESS BIZGRANTS website, this is what will greet you. There's a summary there of why we produced ESS BIZGRANTS and how it works. We're very proud of the testimonial that David Smith, the former president of the Institute of Chartered Accountants in Australia and Managing Director of Smith Inc. 2020 Proprietary Limited, has given us. This is a tool that should reside in every accountant's office. Few accountants are aware of the grants available to their clients. It's a minefield of federal, state, local, special purpose grants that seem to change almost daily. ESS BIZGRANTS has done the hard work in bringing together all this information in an easy-to-use application. If an accountant wants to make a client happy, get them some government money. ESS BIZGRANTS is the tool that can quickly help accountants quickly access whether a client might be able to access a grant. So that's the commentary that David Smith has given us on this site, and he's participated in a few webinars on it. If you want details of the pricing, you can go straight to the site. We do have a free trial for 2 weeks for you to trial one or two of your clients on the system to see how it works, or you can immediately sign up for the monthly subscription or the upfront discounted price for a 12-month subscription. If you want to sign up, you'll be invited to submit some answers to questions so that the username and password to give you that 2-week access can be finalized. Now I'm just going back to the beginning. So that's the summary of ESS BIZGRANTS. I hope that we've been able to answer your questions that you might have had. You haven't sent any to me, so hopefully I've been able to answer the questions that you may have had. We would welcome you as subscribers to ESS BIZGRANTS. Please don't hesitate to contact us. We will be sending you a survey form, and you will be able to view a copy of this recording in a few days' time, probably Tuesday or Wednesday of next week. We will be sending you details of the link to this webinar recording on YouTube. So thank you very much for participating today. I hope Black Friday goes very well for you, and have a great weekend. And if you're into football, may your football team win. Thank you. Goodbye.